Day. It is May 5th, and our reading lesson today will be in our big mentor reading book. And we are going to be talking more about motion and forces, and that's part of our unit, remember, for Unit 10. So, our actual big book today is titled Forces. That is the title. So, be thinking about what that might be about. And now we're going to take a look at our big book. Looks like this. We can see a skier is on the front. This is a real photo of a real skier. So we know that this is a nonfiction, a real story. And we are going to go ahead and just turn to the very first page. And we see table of contents here, okay, which means we have chapters. And as we go through, we are noticing right away some labels. And there's captions down at the bottom. So right away we know that this is going to be an informational text and it's going to be real. So we're going to be seeing a lot of facts. And so we're going to go ahead and begin by just going through and reading the whole story first, and then we'll be talking about some important lessons inside the story. So it's Forces by Joy Brewster.
Words to think about. Force.
A force is a push or a pull.
Gravity.
Gravity helps the skier move down the hill.
Machine.
The machine smooths the surface of the ice.
Motion.
These skaters are in motion as they glide across the ice.
Pull.
The dogs pull the sled across the snow.
Push.
The boy must push the snowblower to make it move.
Now you may have recognized that this is just like what we saw last week in the story of Balto, the dogs pulling the sled.
Introduction.
"Let's go!" shouts your friend. He's waiting for you to push his sled. If you push the sled, then the sled will move down the hill. This book is about pushes. This book is also about pulls. A pull is the opposite of a push. All around you, pushes and pulls are at work.
This man is pushing a sled. This woman is pulling a sled.
So that's what I mentioned in our shared reading yesterday about pushing and pulling. So we're going to get into that more today.
Chapter 1. What is a force?
A force is a push or a pull. A force can put objects in motion. Motion is when something is moving. What forces can you see on these pages?
If you push an object, then the object moves away from you. If you pull an object, then the object moves toward you. Think about it. Find an object in your classroom that needs a push or a pull to make it move.
So you can think about that at home. What objects in your bedroom or in your home that you would maybe push, and then what are some other objects you might pull?
Chapter 2. How do we use forces?
Forces allow us to move objects. Machines help us use less force to do a job. Machines can push or pull objects. We use forces in nature too. Moving air, or wind, is a force. Wind can push the blades of a windmill and make the blades spin.
A snowplow pushes snow away. Did you know? People use windmills to make electricity. A ski lift pulls people up a mountain.
So you might recognize this from our unit when we talked about in technology, when we talked about windmills.
Chapter 3. How do forces change motion?
Jump in the air. Gravity pulls you down to the ground. Gravity is a force. If Earth did not have gravity, then you would keep moving up and up. Friction is a force too. Kick a ball across the ground. The ball slows down because it rubs against the ground. The rubbing causes friction.
Figure it out. Rough surfaces have more friction. Which will come to a stop sooner? A ball moving across an ice rink or a ball pushed with the same force across a carpet? Why? Gravity pulls the snowboarder to the ground. Friction slows the motion of a soccer ball. Friction slows the motion of a hockey puck.
So an example of friction would be like the carpet in our classroom. When you have to push your desks on the carpet, the friction of the carpet slows you down. It makes it harder to push the desk. So that would be one example of friction.
Some forces are big. Some forces are small. If you use a big force, then an object goes faster and farther. A small force only moves the object a little bit. An empty sled is easy to move. If your friend is riding on the sled, then the sled is heavier. You need a bigger force to move the heavier sled.
Each dog adds more force. The sled with more dogs moves faster and farther. Which sled needs a bigger force to make it move? Look at text structure. Cause and effect. Look for the word.
So just looking here, we see that this boy is pulling an empty sled with nobody on it. That's going to be easier to pull than this one that has people on it. It's going to be harder to get it to move. Okay. So in conclusion.
Conclusion.
A force is a push or a pull. A force can make an object move. A force can also slow or stop an object's motion. We use forces every day. Forces can be big or small.
Pushes. Pulls.
So these are more examples of pushes and pulls. Okay? So we're going to be heading back towards the beginning and discussing pushing and pulling on pages 4 and 5. But before we do that, we're going to take a look here at the breakdown. We see in chapter 1 is titled, What is a Force? And so we see that the force is something that is pushed or pulled. A force puts an object in motion. Push to move objects away from you. So when you push, you are moving them away from you. When you are pulling, you pull to move objects toward you. In chapter 2, how do we use forces? Machines help to push and pull, and forces in nature also allow you to be able to move things. And last, in chapter 3, how do forces change motion? It talked about pulls down, friction slows down the motion, and big and small forces make a difference too. So this is just a little bit of an outline of those 3 chapters. Now we're going to take a look at pages 4 and 5. It says we see push right here and we see pulls right here. So when you use the words push and pull, you use them in your everyday life. Think about how you use push and pull. When I read the word push, trying to figure out what it might mean, I look at the photo. and I read the caption. Looking here at the photo, I see the caption says, "This man is pushing a sled." That helps me to understand what push means. So when we push something, we're moving it away from us. And think about the things that you have pushed. Maybe a friend on a bicycle, maybe somebody in a wagon. Those are some examples of pushing. Or, of course, pushing maybe your desk. Then we see here, pull. Looking at the photo, we see somebody showing an example of pulling. This woman is pulling a sled. So she is pulling the object towards her. So these are two examples of the force and motion of push and pull. Now we're going to take a look at pages 6 and 7. So we see here again on pages 6 and 7 are more examples of the motion and force of push and pull. On this page, it says if you push an object, then the object moves away from you. So this family is pushing the snowball away from them. On this page, we see another example of pulling. If you pull an object, then the object is being pulled towards you. So this group of people looks like they're doing that game tug of war that we read last week in our decodable book. They are pulling the pole and they're pulling it towards themselves. So last again, in conclusion, when you push something, you are pushing it away from you. When you are pulling, you're pulling it towards you. Now we're going to take a look at another important part of our story by using text evidence. How did you know the cause and the effect of the force? It says, what is the cause and effect relationship from the text about the sled on page 4? So we're going to go back and look at page 4. I read the words if, right here, if, then. And I'm going to go ahead now and underline those so they'll stand out for you. If, then. That gives us the cause and effect relationship. If is a clue that talks about what the cause, talks about a cause. Then is a clue that tells the effect. The cause is pushing the sled. The effect is the sled moves. So again, the if is the clue that tells the cause. If they are, the cause is pushing the sled, and then the effect is the sled moving down the hill. We see over here on page 7,
Pushes.
There we go. Over here on page 7, if and then again. It says, what is the cause and effect relationship in the caption regarding the force on page 7? If you pull an object, then the object moves towards you. So we see our if and then relationship again. If you pull the object like these people are doing, then the object will move toward you. Another example of cause and effect. Looking on to page 13, we see again, an empty sled is easy to move. If your friend is riding on a sled, then, so I'm going to go ahead and underline those again. If your friend is riding on a sled, that's the cause, then the sled is going to be heavier. So again, we see the if and then relationship. If your friend is on the sled, it's going to be heavier and harder for you to move. So learning a little bit about cause and effect relationships helps us to understand in forces in motion how things work. If I take my hands and I move them forward, then they're not going to be where they were before. First they were here, and then I moved them forward. Now they're away from me. So you can practice if and then, cause and effects relationships in all sorts of things. Look around your room, look around your house, see if you can take something and push or pull it. And then you would be able to have an example of pushing and pulling cause and effect relationship. And that is the end of our reading for today. And I will see you next time. Have a great and happy Tuesday. Bye-bye.